The call came in just as she was dusting the chandelier in Suite 901. Goedemorgen, schat. Hoe gaat het? The words rolled off her tongue effortlessly, smooth and melodic, yet out of place in the silent luxury of the Grand Marlowe Hotel. For a moment, even she forgot where she was, until the sound of a glass being set down behind her made her freeze. Amara slowly turned around. There, standing by the open balcony, was him, Maxwell Grant, the billionaire tech investor who owned half the city's skyline. He wasn't supposed to be back from his meeting for another hour. His tailored navy suit jacket hung over one arm, his silver watch glinting as sunlight flooded in. His eyes, those sharp gray eyes, were fixed right on her. "Did you just speak Dutch?" he asked, voice low but curious. Amara blinked. Her heart skipped a beat. "Yes, sir," she said softly, trying to sound casual. "Just my brother calling from back home." "Back home?" Maxwell repeated, stepping closer. "And where's that exactly?" She hesitated. She'd been trained never to get personal with guests. The rules were clear: be polite, stay professional, no stories, no small talk. But his tone wasn't mocking or impatient, it was curious. "I'm from Suriname," she finally said. "We speak Dutch there." "Suriname," he murmured as if tasting the word. "That's in South America, right?" She nodded, nervously adjusting her housekeeping apron. Maxwell smiled faintly, almost impressed. "I've met plenty of hotel staff in my travels, but I've never heard one speak Dutch like that. You sounded like someone who's lived there a long time." She forced a small smile. "I grew up there. Moved here 6 years ago." He studied her a moment longer before saying, "You know, I've been trying to buy property in Amsterdam for a tech hub. Maybe I should practice my Dutch with you sometime." It was a harmless comment, playful even, but it made her uneasy. She didn't want to draw attention. The fewer eyes on her, the better. Because Amara wasn't just another maid. She had secrets buried under her quiet smile. That night, after her shift ended, Amara walked home through the dim city streets, clutching her worn-out handbag close. Her shoes ached, her uniform still faintly smelled of lemon polish, and her mind replayed that moment. His voice, the way he'd looked at her after hearing her speak. Why had it felt like more than curiosity? At home, her apartment was small but spotless. The single-framed photo on her dresser showed a young boy, her son, Malik, grinning, missing 2 front teeth. The picture was 5 years old. He was in the Netherlands now, staying with her sister until she could bring him over. Every paycheck brought her a little closer. She sat by the window, staring out at the city lights, whispering in Dutch under her breath, prayers, promises, dreams she couldn't share with anyone. If only people knew what she'd been before this job. If only they knew why she'd left her country in the first place. The next morning, she arrived early as always. The Grand Marlowe lobby shimmered like a movie set, gold-trimmed elevators, marble floors, guests in designer coats gliding through as if gravity didn't apply to them. Amara kept her eyes down, her steps light, her cart perfectly arranged. But as she passed the concierge desk, she caught a whisper. Mr. Grant asked for her again. Her stomach tightened. When she looked up, the front desk clerk, Jen, gave her a wide-eyed glance. "You're wanted in Suite 901. The boss said the guest personally requested you." Amara tried to smile, but her pulse was racing. "Maybe it's a mistake." Jen shook her head. "No mistake. He remembered your name." That was impossible. She'd never told him her name. When she entered Suite 901, Maxwell was seated by the breakfast table, scrolling on a tablet, his reading glasses perched halfway down his nose. Amara," he said casually without looking up. "I was hoping they'd send you again." Her heart thudded. "Good morning, sir. I didn't realize you knew my name." "I asked," he said simply, tapping the tablet. "And I pay well enough for the staff to answer." He smiled, a sharp, confident smile that told her he was used to getting what he wanted. "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," he added, noticing her hesitation. "I just find languages fascinating. You speak Dutch. Anything else?" She swallowed. "A few. English, Dutch, and a little Spanish." "A polyglot maid," he mused. "Now that's rare." She turned back to her work, polishing the counter, changing the sheets. But he kept talking about his travels, his frustrations with people who looked at him for his money, his loneliness despite his success. He spoke easily, as if she were more than staff, as if her presence calmed him. And when she laughed softly at one of his jokes, something in his expression changed. For the first time, he looked at her like a person, not a worker. That afternoon, as she was leaving, Maxwell stood near the door and said, "Wait." She turned, clutching her cleaning cloth. He held up his phone. "I've been practicing a few Dutch phrases. Tell me if I'm saying this right." He cleared his throat. "Je bent erg mooi?" Amara's breath caught. He just said, "You are very beautiful," she said quietly. He smiled. "Then I guess I'm learning fast." She looked down, nervous, but before she could say anything, his phone rang again. An unfamiliar voice came through. She froze. That voice. She knew it. Her eyes flickered toward the device before she caught herself. Maxwell noticed. "You know this person?" Amara quickly shook her head. "No, sir." But inside, her heart was pounding. That voice, it was someone from her past. Someone she'd hoped never to hear again. For the next few days, things got complicated. Maxwell began requesting her specifically, asking the hotel management for her to handle his suite exclusively. The staff whispered, rumors spread, the billionaire and the maid. Amara tried to ignore it. She worked quietly, efficiently, always professional. But every day, he'd find some reason to talk. Ask about her life, her dreams, the languages she spoke. "Why do you sound so fluent?" he asked one afternoon, watching her arrange flowers. She smiled faintly. "Because I used to teach." He blinked. "Teach? As in, you were a teacher?" She nodded. "Linguistics professor, actually. Back home." He leaned back, genuinely stunned. "And now you clean rooms?" Her jaw tightened. "Life changes, Mr. Grant." He didn't push, but his eyes softened. For the first time, he looked at her with something like respect. Later that week, something unexpected happened. A foreign investor team arrived at the hotel, Dutch businessmen. They were meeting Maxwell for dinner to discuss a new partnership. The staff was in chaos. Translations, documents, last-minute arrangements. Amara, meanwhile, was called to the ballroom to polish the glassware before the event. She didn't expect to be noticed. But as the dinner began, Maxwell looked up mid-conversation, spotted her across the room, and smiled slightly. One of the Dutch investors made a joke to his colleague. They both laughed, loud, dismissive. Amara heard it, and she understood every word. They were mocking the staff. Maxwell didn't notice at first. But when Amara gently approached to refill a glass, she replied, in perfect Dutch. "Misgien Zudenhuren met Zaviel Geld iets betters kunnen doen dan personeel belachelijk maken." The men froze. Maxwell frowned. "What did you just say?" Amara hesitated, but one of the men flushed and muttered, "She told us, rich men should have better manners." The table went silent. Maxwell's gaze shifted to her, half surprised, half impressed. He didn't scold her. He smiled. "Well," he said finally, raising his glass, "I'd say she's right." The guests exchanged glances, embarrassed as Maxwell toasted. "To people who remind us to be better." Amara blushed, bowed her head, and quietly stepped back. But that night, as the event ended, Maxwell approached her privately. "I need to know who you really are," he said quietly. She froze. "I mean it," he continued. "You're not just a hotel maid. You speak Dutch fluently, you quote philosophers when you think no one's listening, and I've seen the way you move, organized, sharp, educated. Who are you, Amara?" She stared at him, her heart racing. "I'm just someone trying to start over," she said finally. "From what?" he pressed gently. Her throat tightened. "A life that's gone." He frowned but didn't push. "If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here." She gave a small, polite nod and left. But behind her calm expression, panic was rising. Because that phone call, the one from days ago, wasn't random. And if that man from her past had found out where she worked, everything she'd built could come crashing down. That night she got a message. No name. Just a voice note. "Still hiding, Amara?" Her stomach turned to ice. The next morning when she arrived at work, Maxwell was waiting in the lobby, coat off, coffee in hand. He smiled when he saw her, but his expression quickly shifted when he noticed her trembling hands. "Are you okay?" he asked. She forced a smile. "Just tired." He didn't believe her. But before he could ask anything, the hotel manager called him over. "Mr. Grant, your Dutch partners are waiting upstairs." He nodded, still glancing back at Amara. "We'll talk later." That afternoon, as she cleaned another suite, she heard something that made her blood run cold. Two security guards were talking by the service hallway. "They say someone's been calling asking for the maid from 901. No name, just her description. Said he was a relative, but the voice sounded off. The hotel's tracing it." Amara's hand trembled around the duster. He'd found her. She slipped out the back door, heart hammering, desperate for air. But just as she reached the staff exit, she heard a familiar voice. "Amara." "Maxwell." He'd followed her. "Why are you running?" he asked softly. She turned, tears threatening. "Please, Mr. Grant, just forget you ever met me." "I can't do that," he said quietly. "You're in trouble, aren't you?" She swallowed hard. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." For the first time, her composure broke. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Someone from my past found me. Someone dangerous." Maxwell's expression hardened. "Then you're not alone anymore." "What would you have done in Maxwell's place? Would you help a stranger who's clearly hiding something, or walk away? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Residential Stories. The silence between them was thick, so thick you could feel it pressing against the walls of the empty staff corridor. Amara stood frozen by the service exit, her hands trembling against her apron. Maxwell's words lingered in the air like a promise she didn't dare trust. "You don't have to do this," she whispered finally, her voice breaking. "Please, Mr. Grant, just forget what I said." But Maxwell wasn't a man who let things go easily. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Amara, if someone's threatening you, I can help. You have no idea how much power I have." "That's exactly the problem," she cut in. "People with power always think they can fix things. Some things can't be fixed." Her tone was sharp, but her eyes told another story: fear, exhaustion, and something else, guilt. He saw it. "Who is he?" Maxwell asked softly. She hesitated, her breath trembling. "Someone I trusted. Someone who cost me everything." Before she could say more, a voice crackled through the staff intercom. "Amara, to the lobby, please. Guest inquiry." She froze. "Don't," Maxwell said quickly. "I'll go check who it is." But she was already walking toward the elevator. "If I don't show up, it'll look suspicious." The elevator doors closed before he could stop her. In the lobby, the scene was deceptively calm. Guests moved in and out, luggage rolled across the marble, and the scent of jasmine lingered from the hotel's fragrance diffusers. Amara approached the reception desk, trying to steady her breath. "Someone asked for me?" The clerk nodded, glancing nervously at a tall man sitting in the corner, wearing a beige coat and a thin smile. His hair was slicked back, and his eyes were the color of cold steel. He stood as soon as he saw her. "Amara." Her world tilted. "Hello, sis." Her stomach dropped. "Kofi." The name came out like a ghost. He grinned wider. "So you do remember." The front desk clerk looked between them, confused. "Is everything all right?" Amara forced a tight smile. "Just family visit." But inside, her pulse was racing. Kofi wasn't her brother, not anymore. Not since the night he'd dragged her into his mess back home. Not since he'd gotten her fired, humiliated, and nearly arrested for something she hadn't done. He leaned closer, voice low. "You've been hiding real good, huh? Cleaning rooms for rich men now?" "Leave," she hissed. "You have no right to be here." "Oh, I have every right," he whispered. "You owe me. Remember Amsterdam? The passport? The deal you ran out on?" Her chest tightened. "I paid my debt. I told you I wanted out." "You don't just get out, Amara," he said, his voice turning colder. "You disappeared with my money. You think I wouldn't find you?" I didn't take your money. Don't lie, he snapped, slamming his hand on the counter. The clerk flinched. Security started glancing their way. Amara took a shaky breath. Please, not here. Let's talk outside. Kofi smirked. That's better. Outside, the wind was sharp. The hotel's glass doors reflected the two of them like a fractured mirror, one standing tall and bitter, the other trembling but unbroken. You've got 10 minutes, she said. Kofi crossed his arms. I just want what's mine. You took 20 grand. That was supposed to clear my record. Amara's voice cracked. You used my name for a smuggling deal. I lost my job, my reputation, my son. I had to flee because of you. He shrugged. We all make choices, sis. I'm not your sister anymore. For a moment, the air was still. Then he leaned in, smirking. You're gonna fix this for me. You're working for some big shot now, right? Mr. Moneybags in that suite? You'll help me get in touch with him. Her blood ran cold. No. Oh yes, he said, stepping closer. You're gonna get me an introduction. Investors like him don't even notice people like me, but they trust people like you. Sweet, quiet, loyal Amara. I said no, she snapped, voice trembling. He smiled cruelly. Then maybe I'll tell the cops where you really came from. You think they'll let you stay once they find out about the Amsterdam case? Tears welled in her eyes. That wasn't me, Kofi. You know it wasn't. He leaned in, whispering in Dutch, Maar zij zullen ju geloven, niet mij. But they'll believe you, not me. Before she could respond, a deep voice interrupted. Is there a problem here? Maxwell. He stood just behind them, jaw tight, eyes locked on Kofi. Amara's breath caught. Mr. Grant, please? Who's this? Maxwell asked. Kofi grinned, sliding back into English. Family reunion. Nothing serious. Maxwell's gaze shifted between them, reading the tension. Doesn't look like nothing. Amara looked down, whispering, It's fine. He was just leaving. Kofi smirked, then gave Maxwell a mock salute. Pleasure meeting you, sir. You've got a very interesting employee. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Maxwell turned back to Amara. Talk. Her throat closed. I can't. He stepped closer, softer now. Amara, whoever that man is, he's dangerous, isn't he? Her silence was answer enough. Then you're not going home tonight, he said firmly. You're coming with me. An hour later, Amara sat stiffly in the back seat of Maxwell's black SUV. The city lights blurred outside as the car sped toward the private penthouse he kept near the harbor. I shouldn't be here, she murmured. You're safer here than in that apartment, he said. I've seen enough to know that man means trouble. She looked down. You don't understand. He won't stop. He wants something I don't have. Maxwell's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Then we'll make sure he never finds what he's looking for. When they reached the penthouse, Amara couldn't hide her awe. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glowing skyline. Everything gleamed, polished marble, minimalist furniture, quiet luxury. She stood awkwardly near the doorway. I don't belong here. Maxwell turned to face her. You belong somewhere safe. She hesitated, then whispered, Why are you doing this? He met her gaze. Because you helped me see something I forgot existed, kindness. You didn't treat me like money, or fame, or a deal. You just saw me. Now it's my turn. Her eyes softened. You barely know me. I know enough. That night, while Maxwell made a few calls to his private security firm, Amara stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. Her reflection looked like a stranger, tired, scared, yet quietly defiant. She whispered in Dutch, Ik wou dat je hier was, Malik. I wish you were here, Malik. Her son's face flashed in her mind, his laughter, his innocence. Everything she'd lost because of Kofi's betrayal. She didn't notice Maxwell returning until he spoke gently behind her. Was that your son's name? She turned, startled. You speak Dutch now? He smiled faintly. Google Translate. She almost laughed. Almost. Then her expression darkened. He's in the Netherlands. With my sister. I send money every month. I was supposed to bring him here next year. Maxwell's voice softened. You will. But Amara shook her head. Not if Kofi ruins everything again. Maxwell's eyes hardened. He won't. I had my team run a check. He's been flagged for multiple fraud cases across Europe. He's using fake IDs. If he contacts you again, we'll have evidence ready. Her breath hitched. You did all that already? He nodded. I protect my own. Something in her heart shifted. The next morning, while Maxwell stepped out for a meeting, Amara walked around the penthouse, unsure whether to feel grateful or trapped. She'd spent years hiding in silence, never letting anyone in, never trusting anyone enough to help. Now, for the first time, someone cared. But just as she began to relax, her phone buzzed. A known number. She hesitated, then answered. Thought you could hide in a rich man's castle? Her blood turned to ice. Kofi! Tell your new boyfriend I don't like being followed, he growled. You're gonna fix this or I'll make sure your precious son never gets that visa. Her breath caught. What do you mean? I know people, he said coldly. They can make Malik's life complicated. Tears welled in her eyes. Please, don't involve him. Then do what I say, Kofi said. Tomorrow night. The hotel gala. Mr. Grant's bringing his laptop, right? You'll leave the door unlocked. I'll take care of the rest. No, she whispered. You're asking me to betray him. You already did, remember? His laugh was low, bitter. Once a liar, always a liar. The line went dead. Amara stood frozen, the phone shaking in her hand. That evening, when Maxwell returned, he found her quiet, too quiet. You're pale, he said gently. Everything okay? She forced a smile. Just tired. He didn't buy it but didn't press. Tomorrow's a big night. The hotel gala, international investors, Dutch press. You'll be there, right? I requested you as my event liaison. Her heart sank. Yes, sir. The next day passed in a blur. Amara moved through her tasks mechanically, her mind consumed by the threat. If she refused Kofi, he'd go after Malik. But if she obeyed him, she'd destroy the one person who'd ever shown her kindness. That night, the Grand Marlowe glittered like a jewel. Guests in evening wear filled the ballroom. Cameras flashed. The orchestra played softly in the corner. Amara moved quietly among them, adjusting table settings, greeting guests, staying invisible. From across the room, Maxwell caught her eye and smiled warmly. She tried to return it, but guilt twisted in her chest. Kofi's words echoed in her head. Tomorrow night. Leave the door unlocked. As Maxwell excused himself to take a private call, Amara followed at a distance. He entered a side office, the one holding his personal files and laptop for the event. She saw the lock mechanism flash green. All she had to do was leave it open. Her hand hovered over the door handle. Her mind screamed no. But then she pictured Malik, her baby, alone, overseas. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, I'm sorry. She left the door slightly ajar and walked away. Minutes later, Kofi slipped into the corridor, disguised in a waiter's uniform. His eyes gleamed with triumph. He pushed the door open, grinning, then froze. Inside, Maxwell was waiting. Looking for me? Kofi's grin faltered. You, how? Let's just say I don't ignore red flags, Maxwell said coolly. Amara told me everything. Kofi's face darkened. She set me up? Before he could move, 2 security guards stepped out of the shadows, guns drawn. Mr. Kofi Mensah, Maxwell said calmly, you're under arrest for fraud, blackmail, and extortion. Interpol's been looking for you for years. Kofi lunged forward, but within seconds, he was pinned to the floor. Maxwell looked down at him. You should have stayed away. As the guards dragged him out, Kofi's eyes burned with hatred. She betrayed me again. Maxwell's tone turned cold. No, she finally stopped running. Outside, Amara stood trembling near the ballroom exit, unsure if she could breathe. Then Maxwell appeared, calm, collected, and safe. She looked up at him, tears spilling down her cheeks. You knew. He nodded. I told you, I protect my own. You weren't alone, Amar. Not this time. She covered her face, sobbing quietly. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. He said he'd hurt my son. He gently took her hands. You did what any mother would do. You fought to protect your child. Her voice cracked. What happens now? He smiled softly. Now, you stop hiding. The sirens faded into the night as police cars pulled away from the Grand Marlowe Hotel. Guests whispered, staff peeked from hallways, and flashes from the media cameras caught the tail end of Kofi's arrest. Inside, Amara stood in the empty ballroom, her hands still trembling. The chandelier lights shimmered above her like 1,000 watching eyes. Everything felt unreal. She had spent years running, from her past, from her guilt, from the truth. And now, in one night, it had all come crashing to the surface. When Maxwell returned, she turned quickly, eyes wet but steady. I never meant for any of this to happen, she whispered. You shouldn't have gotten involved. He walked up to her, his voice calm but firm. Amara, you think I'm angry? She couldn't meet his gaze. You should be. I'm not, he said quietly. I'm just sorry you had to fight this alone for so long. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Amara broke the silence. You don't understand. This wasn't just a bad brother or a mistake. Back home, I worked for a private language institute. It was connected to an export company, legit, I thought. Until I found out they were smuggling antiques and stolen art through coded manifests. Maxwell frowned. And Kofi was part of it? She nodded. He ran their distribution network. I was stupid. I helped him translate documents, thinking it was paperwork for a museum deal. When the police raided the office, my name was all over the files. He vanished. I lost everything. Her voice trembled. My job. My reputation. My visa. I barely escaped with Malik's passport. That's why I came here. Why I became a maid. It was the only job I could get without questions. Maxwell's expression softened, full of empathy. And all this time, you've been punishing yourself for something you didn't do. Amara's lips quivered. The guilt doesn't care if I was innocent. Over the next few days, the story of the billionaire's Dutch maid hero spread through local news. The hotel tried to contain the gossip, but people talked. Some said Maxwell had fallen for her. Others claimed she was secretly an undercover agent. The truth was quieter, simpler, two people who shouldn't have met, helping each other heal. Maxwell arranged legal counsel for her, reaching out to an immigration lawyer and an international justice contact he knew from a tech foundation. You don't have to do this, she said one morning as they sat by his office window overlooking the harbor. He smiled faintly. I don't have to, but I want to. You deserve a clean start. Amara looked out the window, her voice low. I don't even know what a clean start looks like anymore. He turned to her. It looks like a woman who risked everything to protect her son, and finally has a chance to live without fear. Tears stung her eyes. You make it sound so easy. It's not, he said softly. But I can help make it possible. Weeks passed. The case against Kofi moved quickly. The evidence Maxwell's team gathered was airtight. Amara testified via video, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The prosecutors in the Netherlands contacted her, confirming her innocence in the old case. For the first time in years, she slept through the night. And every morning, she woke to sunlight spilling across the harbor view, peace she hadn't known she needed. But there was something else, too. A quiet bond forming between her and Maxwell. It wasn't spoken, wasn't rushed. It grew in the silence between conversations, in shared coffee cups and soft laughter that neither of them saw coming. He'd catch her humming Dutch lullabies while folding napkins. She'd catch him smiling too long when she entered the room. Still, Amara kept her boundaries. Gratitude wasn't love. And she'd spent too many years learning that kindness could sometimes be another form of control. One evening, Maxwell finally said what had been hanging in the air for weeks. Amara, when all this is over, what do you want? She smiled faintly. Peace. He nodded. And Malik? Her eyes softened. I just want him to see me without fear in his eyes again. Maxwell looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then let's bring him here. She froze. What? I spoke to the immigration board, he said gently. The case is clear now. Your record's been wiped. You can apply for his visa again, and this time, I'll make sure it goes through. Tears welled up instantly. You'd really do that? He smiled. You've done enough cleaning up after everyone else's mess. Let me clean up one for you. 2 months later, Amara stood in the arrivals terminal of JFK Airport, her heart hammering. A stream of passengers poured through customs, families reuniting, lovers embracing, travelers rushing. Then through the crowd she saw him. Malik. 7 years old now, taller, eyes wide with disbelief as he spotted her. Mama! She dropped everything and ran. Her knees hit the floor as she caught him in her arms, sobbing into his shoulder. His tiny arms wrapped around her neck like he'd never let go again. I told you I'd come back for you, she whispered in Dutch. Altijd. Always. Behind them, Maxwell stood at a respectful distance, watching quietly. When Amara finally looked up, she smiled through her tears. This is the man who helped us, she told Malik softly. Say thank you. The boy turned shyly and said, Dank je wel, meneer. Maxwell chuckled. You've got your mother's accent. That's a good thing. Life slowly began to feel normal, though normal, for Amara had a new meaning. She returned to work at the hotel part-time, but Maxwell insisted on covering her legal and living expenses until she could get back on her feet. Malik started attending a local school. His laughter filled their small apartment with warmth. But even peace can bring questions. Some nights, Amara found herself staring at her reflection, asking the same one over and over. Why me? Why had Maxwell cared? Why had a man with everything risked his reputation for a woman who had nothing? One evening, she found her answer. Maxwell invited her to dinner at a small restaurant by the water. Nothing fancy, just quiet. They talked about Malik's school, the upcoming hotel expansion, and the weather. Then, after a pause, he said, You remind me of someone I lost. She looked up. Who? He smiled sadly. My mother. Amara blinked. Your mother? He nodded slowly. She was a maid too. Immigrant. Came to this country with nothing. Cleaned offices at night while raising me and my sister. She spoke 5 languages. People used to laugh at her accent, at her uniform, but she was the smartest person I ever knew. He took a breath. She died when I was in college. Heart condition. I spent years pretending I'd moved past it, but I never did. Then I met you, and suddenly I remembered her voice again. Her courage. Her grace. Amara felt tears welling again, unexpected and raw. Maxwell's gaze softened. That's why I couldn't walk away. Helping you, it wasn't charity. It was me finally doing for someone what no one did for her. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Just promise me one thing, he said quietly. Don't go back to hiding. Months passed, and Amara's story slowly became one of transformation. She used Maxwell's recommendation to apply for a position at a local language center. When they heard her credentials, they offered her a teaching role. The day she stood in front of her first class, whiteboard marker in hand, her son waiting after school in the next room, she realized something. She'd come full circle. The girl who once ran from words had found her power in them again. During her first lecture, she wrote one sentence across the board in bold, confident Dutch. Woorden kunnen breken, maar ze kunnen ook helen. Words can break, but they can also heal. Her students stared curiously. She smiled. That's the first lesson. Healing starts when you tell your story, not when you hide it. A year later, the Grand Marlow Hotel hosted a special charity event, this time, organized by Amara herself. The proceeds would go toward scholarships for immigrant children learning English as a second language. Maxwell attended, proud but quiet. As the crowd applauded her speech, Amara looked across the room and met his gaze. For a moment, everything fell away. The past, the fear, the years of silence. After the event, she approached him. Still think maids don't change lives? She teased. He grinned. Only the ones who speak Dutch. They both laughed. It wasn't a grand confession or a fairy tale ending. It was something stronger, mutual respect, understanding, and peace. Amara looked up at him, voice soft but steady. You know, I used to think speaking different languages made me invisible. But now I see, it made me unforgettable. Maxwell smiled. And unstoppable. She laughed, wiping a tear. You're not wrong. Later that night, as she tucked Malik into bed, he asked sleepily, Mama, are we rich now? Amara smiled, brushing his hair back. Rich in what matters? He frowned. Like money? She chuckled. No. Like peace? He nodded drowsily. I like peace. She kissed his forehead, whispering in Dutch, Ik oké mijn lief. Me too, my love. And for the first time in years, she didn't dream of running. She dreamed of home. Moral: sometimes, life puts us in rooms we don't belong in, not to humble us, but to remind others how grace, dignity, and kindness look when they wear a uniform. And sometimes, the people who seem to have lost everything are just waiting for someone to see what they've truly kept, their humanity. If this story touched your heart, tell us what you learned from Amara's journey. Would you have trusted Maxwell? Or walked away from help to protect your pride? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Residential Stories for more powerful, real-inspired tales that touch the soul.